redefining global financial architecture.
Thank you very, very much. And with that, we go to a view from UNECA. It's Hanan Morsi. Over to you. Thank you.
For a great job. Very well done. I would like to just focus perhaps on what do we need to achieve the economic transformation that we all aspire to. I think there is a joint responsibility at multiple levels. So at domestic level, we need to ensure that we're crowding in the private sector, creating an enabling environment, reducing policy and regulatory uncertainty. We need to also ensure that there is better debt management. We need to build capacity to design and structure the innovative instruments that Kevin has been referring to. So we need to make sure that we're doing our part, and that also includes ensuring high returns for each dollar that we spend, that we're getting the highest returns. So really ensuring expenditure efficiency. And of course, we need to enhance domestic resource mobilization. We need to ensure that we are really curbing leakages even in taxation, meaning, the tax exemptions that we have, the concessions that we have. We need to have really tough discussions at a national level, of what are we getting in terms of returns for the revenues that we are losing. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are leveraging huge regional opportunities. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that we need to advance its implementation, and we need to focus on building regional value chains so that we can create better jobs, higher wages, and actually tap our natural resources, be it renewable resources or green minerals. This is the future. We need to shift, our growth paradigm. We can no longer export our development opportunities by exporting raw material. If we do that,
can we give that a round of applause, please? Thank you.
So really tapping on this and building on it to develop our green industries will be key for us not to be followers in development, but to lead the way in developing for the future. And we need to also use that to tackle, I think, the biggest challenge for the economic transformation, which is the huge energy gap that we have in the continent. So if we can tap the energy pools, build the transmission lines that we were talking about in an earlier meeting today, that will give us the opportunity to address that biggest obstacle to economic transformation. And then, doing all that, then we need to also make sure that we're advocating at a global level to get what is needed to achieve it. And here comes, the global financial architecture reforms that ECA has been convening the Africa High-Level Working Group with the African Union, with AfDB and others, to try to really build the consensus of African for reforms and advanced at a global level. And here, the three most important areas is, one, making sure that we have affordable finance at scale. We need to be able to invest in SDGs. We need to be able to tackle climate action and at an affordable rates. For that to happen, comes exactly what my dear friend Alexia was mentioning, the role of MDBs. That will be critical. We need a bigger role for MDBs, and to enable them to do this, we need to make sure that they are sufficiently capitalized, that their concessional windows, and here I'd like to emphasize the need to make sure that the Africa Development Fund is appropriately capitalized so that it can provide concessional and affordable finance. And we need to also make sure that we are maximizing the balance sheet utilization that allows MDBs to take more risk on their balance sheet. So all these things will be very critical to make sure that this happens. And I'm really delighted, and congratulations, that the SDR rechanneling framework has been approved. This is a critical and historical milestone that now will enable underutilized idle resources in the form of IMF special drawing rights that are not currently utilized to actually create 3 to 4 times leverage. And we hope the size of that allocation and the channeling of it will materialize soon to actually enable that. So that would be a very important area to ensure that we get the donor country support and pledges to make that operational. And of course, we need to make sure that we have a global debt resolution framework that actually works. We need to reform the G20 to make sure that it's effective, time-bound, transparent, includes middle income, and have a comparability of treatment. So this will be really important. And finally, and relates to the issue of curbing illicit financial flows, we have a great opportunity with the UN Tax Convention that has been put forward by the African group in the United Nations to actually address this issue at a global stage. So hope that we can really rally efforts to ensure that that goes through so that we can curb these leakages. Just to illustrate, the leakages from the illicit financial flows, which is over $85 billion a year, is multiples of what the continent receives annually in official development finance, so in ODA assistance. So that tells you that we need to keep our eye, on the ball to focus really on what matters.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to an incredible panel. Great insights, a lot of alignment. And I think one of the things I will say as we close, been driving these kinds of conversations for over 2 decades, Africa's voice is getting louder, and Africa is increasingly speaking with one voice. This issue is so important, ladies and gentlemen. Stay the course. Stay the course. Thank you for the report. They appeal to all of us. Stay this course. Let me finish by just reminding us that this is really for the mama mboga. It's for the woman in the market who struggles every day to eke a living for her children. It's for this huge population of young Africans coming out, looking for opportunity, passionate about this continent, some dying literally to leave the continent when this is their home. And we owe them here opportunities, lives, dignified and fulfilling work, safety, and a stake in the continent that is Africa. And so just settling back on that as we close and saying, I referenced Africa earlier as a strong tree without strong ground. And there is an African proverb that tells us a tree cannot stand without roots. Africa, let's create those roots and let's ask our partners and stakeholders to ensure there is a level playing field. The ground is firm. Thank you so much. A warm round of applause, please. Can I ask our panelists to stand and ask, please, Professor Orama to come up, and we're going to take a picture. Thank you so much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, copies of the report are available in English and French. And where do people collect them, Eric? At the door? At the door. Please pick your copy at the door. Thank you so much.
Ueno is home to one of Tokyo's great terminal railway stations. Each day, it handles 150,000 passengers. At the heart of the district lies Ueno Park. This is an old park. In 2023, it celebrated its 150th anniversary. Despite its big city location, it's a great place to enjoy the seasons as they pass. One of the park's main features is this 400-year-old temple. It was important to the Tokugawa shoguns during their rule over Japan. Back then, the temple's 100-hectare grounds were a favorite leisure spot for the people. As Japan entered the modern age, these temple grounds became the nation's first public park. New buildings inspired by Western culture sprang up around its edges. The area became a center of culture for Tokyo. Let's follow the changing seasons in Ueno Park. The park is at its busiest in spring, when the cherry trees blossom. Over 3 million visitors come to see the sakura in bloom. With about 1,200 magnificent cherry trees, this is one of Japan's most popular spots to go cherry blossom viewing. After about 2 weeks, the sakura petals fall. But they're quickly followed by the park's splendid hydrangeas. The arrival of summer brings fresh colours. Shinobazu Pond along the south side of the park becomes bright with lotus flowers. Ueno Zoo is Japan's oldest, with about 300 kinds of animals. Summer is the zoo's peak season when schools are on holiday. It's a summer tradition to remember family ancestors. Lanterns floating on Shinobazu Pond carry memories of departed loved ones. In fall, the park's trees become a riot of colour. This is the season for culture, and Ueno is home to the Tokyo National Museum, Japan's oldest. Many of Japan's most important cultural treasures are displayed here. Fall is also famous for its food, and Ueno is a gourmet paradise. Some seasonal tastes have been enjoyed here for centuries. As the days turn cold, the park's winter peonies put on a proud show. In the days before New Year, Ameyoko Shopping Street fills with crowds buying festive foods. If you're looking for a unique gift, try the specialty stores nearby, under the elevated tracks by Ueno Station. We're back at Kaneiji Temple, the origin of Ueno Park. It's New Year's Eve, and they're ringing the great bell. This is a ritual to purify hearts in preparation for the year to come. Ueno Park allows city dwellers to enjoy nature throughout the year. For over 150 years, it's provided a home for culture and a space for Tokyo's citizens to relax.
In spring and autumn, Japan's forests are ripe with mushrooms. Of all the many types, Shiitake are perhaps the mushrooms most often used in washoku or Japanese cuisine. Both fresh and dried shiitake are used. The dried mushrooms are first rehydrated by soaking in water. Shiitake produce the umami flavor that's the basis of all washoku. Not only delicious, but also safe and chemical-free, Japanese dried shiitake are growing in popularity abroad. 16 countries now import major quantities of these delicious meaty mushrooms that are often cooked in the same way as steak. Oita, in the southern island of Kyushu, is Japan's largest producer of dried shiitake mushrooms. 70% of Oita is forested, and these forests contain many broadleaf trees like oak, and especially sawtooth oak that are ideal for shiitake cultivation. There are two methods of shiitake cultivation. They can be grown indoors on artificial mushroom beds and on logs out in the forest. Shiitake for eating fresh are usually grown indoors, while shiitake for drying are grown outdoors on logs. For indoor cultivation, mushroom beds of finely crushed wood with added nutrients are inoculated with shiitake spores. Our organic shiitake mushrooms are grown on beds made from freshly cut sawtooth oak, grown right here in Oita. To help the mushrooms grow, we infuse the beds with specially selected natural nutrients. Temperature, humidity, and
to this staple event of the bank's annual meetings, the financial presentation and the African Development Effectiveness Review. It's an opportunity for management to share the bank's performance in the past year. As the continent navigates through challenging times, the results reflected in these reports underscore Africa's remarkable resilience. These development results represent a collective achievement delivered in collaboration and partnership with other multilateral development banks and development partners, and of course, our client countries. In this year's report, we've incorporated innovative tools and methods like satellite imagery to better capture and analyze the development impact of our investments. For instance, using high-resolution impact mapping, we were able to assess the impact of bank-financed water and sanitation projects on the living conditions of residents in 28 urban areas in Kenya. In responding to the desire of our shareholders for MDBs to work as a system, this year's report also provides the full development results of our co-finance projects, which allows us to demonstrate the bank's increased efforts in mobilizing and catalyzing other sources of financing, including from the private sector. As you will see from the upcoming presentation, the African Development Bank Group remains financially sound. Despite the lingering challenges of the pandemic and geopolitical tensions, the bank preserved its AAA rating, generated an historically high net income, and approved projects to the value of $10 billion, the second highest level of approval in its history. Following my intervention, my colleagues will present further details on the development impact of our operations and financial performance achieved in the past year. And of course, there will be a short video which will showcase some of these operations. Honorable governors, the bank has just released its 10-year strategy for the period 2024 to 2033. The new 10-year strategy reflects the priorities and most pressing needs of our regional member countries, and it is fully aligned with the SDGs and Agenda 2063 objectives. The strategy reflects the ambitions of the continent for the Africa we want, and comes during the year when the continental body is prioritizing making the Africa Continental Free Trade Area fully operational. The new 10-year strategy outlines the vision of an Africa that is prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and integrated, supported by twin strategic objectives: accelerating inclusive green growth in Africa and driving prosperous and resilient economies. To pursue these twin objectives, the bank has defined clear pathways for addressing Africa's pressing challenges and to help put the continent firmly back on track towards sustained economic growth and prosperity. The High Five operational priorities will continue to shape the implementation of the strategy as they continue to be aligned with the objectives of Agenda 2063 and the SDGs. The implementation of these priorities will be underpinned by the cross-cutting priorities which promote gender equality, investments in young people, responding to climate change, building resilience to shocks, conflicts, and fragility, and of course, strengthening economic governance. The strategy outlines the bank's response to the complex threats facing Africa and to the global and regional challenges, answering the call by the G20 for MDBs to reform to become better, bigger, and more efficient. The new strategy is clear about the need to scale up, individually and in partnership, in order to massify impact, to accelerate delivery, to address global and regional challenges, so that we can help Africa achieve its development objectives sustainably. In this regard, the bank will continue to adapt its operational model, simplify its business processes, and further collaborate with other MDBs to promote mutual reliance in areas such as procurement, diagnostic tools, and social and environmental safeguards. For instance, the bank is making progress in discussions with the World Bank towards mutual reliance, but more importantly, in pursuing joint programming in areas such as increasing access to electricity. The bank will also support member countries or regional member countries in establishing appropriate platforms for better coordination at country level. The bank is recognized for its leadership in financial innovations, implementing many of the recommendations of the G20 Capital Adequacy Framework. Our financial innovations, from the pioneering sustainable hybrid instrument issued in the first quarter of this year, balance sheet optimization, such as the room to run transactions on our sovereign and non-sovereign portfolios, and the progress we've made in partnership with the Inter-America Development Bank to advocate for the rechanneling of SDRs, demonstrate the potential of the ingenuity of our teams to mobilize resources for Africa. We will not stop here. We agree that more can and should be done to crowd in the private sector to address global and regional public goods. As a learning organization, the new TYS and MDB's reform provide an opportunity to rethink our processes, policies, and procedures to improve our delivery where many challenges remain. We are acutely aware that our ability to respond to the challenge to be better, bigger, and more efficient requires a rethinking of how we work. We will increasingly focus our means and resources to improve quality at entry, enhance forward planning, review our delivery approaches, including optimizing the organization of our project staff to ensure quality throughout the project cycle, and leveraging technology for our operational processes. We are assessing our staffing needs based on current and future business needs, particularly as we intend to scale up private sector operations. Your views, governors, and reflections during the Governors' Dialogue will guide management's engagement with the Board of Directors in this regard. The bank will define incentives for countries, private sector, bank staff to implement reforms and mobilize the necessary financial resources to support regional member countries. The bank will also provide appropriate institutional incentives to focus on outcomes and development impact across projects. We shall enhance our decentralization model through a more universal but tailored presence to better respond to the needs of our clients and to strengthen our dialogue with them. We are committed to fully resource compliance functions, including the full implementation of the Safeguard Strengthening Action Plan. I am pleased today to confirm that the updated Integrity Safeguard System policy will become effective tomorrow morning, following extensive communication to staff and our clients. Finally, honorable governors and distinguished guests, the African Development Bank is motivated to start implementing the new strategy. We recognize that we can achieve more by collaboration, mutual reliance, and combined efforts to massify our development impact. So I will end my remarks today with a popular proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Well, at the AfDB, we want to do both. Go fast and go together. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asanteni sana.
Well, as the saying goes, the taste of the pudding is always in the eating. And following that very compelling but succinct overview by Senior Vice President Swazi Shabalala, kindly turn your attention to the screens for a short Annual Development Effectiveness Report video presentation.
Africa continues to thrive despite a challenging environment of rising living costs, high borrowing rates, climate shocks, and persistent fragility. It is a continent of resilience and progress. For 60 years, the African Development Bank Group has been a beacon of hope and socio-economic progress, standing shoulder to shoulder with all African countries to overcome today's challenges and build a strong foundation for a brighter and prosperous future. In 2023, the bank continued to deliver impactful and far-reaching results in collaboration with its partners across the high 5 priorities. From bringing electricity to 2.4 million people, supporting the establishment of 34,000 agribusinesses, to improving sanitation services for 8 million people, the bank's work and projects are transforming lives across the continent. Infrastructure development remains the cornerstone of the bank's priorities, with over $44 billion invested in the past 7 years. For instance, the Nacala Corridor is linking Zambia and Malawi to the port in Mozambique, reducing travel times by 58% and significantly boosting regional connectivity. In West Africa, the bank is fostering a dynamic electric power market in Mano River Union countries, promoting sustainable power trade and reducing regional reliance on thermal power. In Kenya, The town's sustainable water supply and sanitation program is providing crucial water security to rural communities, stimulating economic growth, and strengthening climate resilience. These are not just numbers. They are real stories of impact. To ensure this is the case, we track our impact. In the past 8 years, this project has helped over 2 million individuals gain access to improved drinking water, leading to remarkable social progress, such as the 61% increase in youth employment in Chogoria in eastern Kenya. As we celebrate our 60th anniversary, we reflect on our journey. In this time, we've funded over 5,400 projects, representing an investment of $184 billion in Africa's development. Our results are evident. Our impact is measurable. You can explore our investments through our Map Africa platform, whose new features will transform how we measure our impact. Explore project details and track our progress on delivering the bank's new 10-year strategy. See the tangible impact of our work across the continent through our results management framework. From rural areas to towns, cities to countries, countries to regions, results can be obtained in one easily accessible portal. For more, dive into this year's annual Development Effectiveness Review or visit Map Africa to see how, together, we are shaping Africa's future. A future that is inclusive, resilient, integrated, and prosperous. The African Development Bank, Africa's Solutions Bank, making a difference.
Very succinct, very powerful. There's a lot that stands out there, but for me, $184 billion worth of investments over a 60-year period. Those are no small potatoes. Once again, let's give the management, present and past, of the African Development Bank a warm round of applause. The truth of the matter is that in leadership, we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. And the bank has had a historic season of very seasoned leaders who have helped bring us to this point. During the rest of the year and during the 60th anniversary celebrations, there will be opportunities to acknowledge the contributions of many of our leaders. As we hear these reports, again, let us keep them in mind, those who are still with us today, and in absentia, give them also a warm round of applause. So following that short video presentation, we will segue very quickly into a panel discussion with several key members of the bank's senior management team. Through their hard, challenging, but very impactful work, the bank is able to do what it does year on, year out. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the platform the Vice President of Finance, Hassatu Nsele. Please give her a warm round of applause. And she will be followed by the Vice President for Regional Development, Integration, and Business Delivery, Marie-Laure Akin-Olugbade. And please also welcome to the platform the Vice President for Power, Energy, Climate Change, and Green Growth, Kevin Kariuki, who will be followed by the Vice President for Agriculture, Human and Social Development, Beth Dunford. And joining them on the platform will be Solomon Quainer, the Vice President for the Private Sector and Infrastructure, as well as Industrialization. Joining them also is Kevin Urama, the Vice President for Economic Governance and Knowledge Management, as well as the Chief Economist of the bank. And last but certainly not the least, we will be joined by the Director of Development, Impact and Results, Armand Nzeyimana. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this panel discussion. You know, it's one thing to see and it's another thing to hear first-hand accounts of what has transpired over the last 1 year. And as I look at you on the platform, I get the feeling, I have a suspicion, that you're loaded with information. But given the limitations of time, I'm going to ask that we kindly keep our responses short and concise. Someone once said that the most basic of all human needs is to understand and to be understood, and that the best way to understand people is to listen. So we're here today to understand and to listen to you as you make your presentation. And it is my hope that as we listen intently to what our panelists have to share with us this morning, that we will gain very useful insights into the challenges, the opportunities, as well as the successes of the bank over the preceding year. I think it's only appropriate at this point that I go with my first question to Armand. It really is pretty exciting to see the latest edition of the bank's flagship publication, the African Development Effectiveness Review, which has been summarized pretty much in the video presentation and been talked about by the Senior Vice President. So I'm certain that along with many members of our audience today, myself included, there is a curiosity about how the bank measures success, the success of its interventions. So my question to you, Armand, is, as far as the bank is concerned, what does success really look like?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor. So indeed, we are very pleased to use the opportunity of the annual meetings to share with shareholders, partners, key stakeholders, the progress that the bank is making in supporting the continent's development efforts. So going back to your question, Victor, how do we measure success? So the success at the African Development Bank is measured through the use of our results management framework, and we've mentioned it in the presentation, in the short video you've just seen. So this is an important corporate tool that assesses the bank's contribution to Africa's development priorities. This important tool was, in fact, recently recognized by the Center for Global Development as a model for other MDBs for its effectiveness in measuring and reporting on development results. So we're very pleased by this recognition by the Center for Global Development. So let me clarify, what do we mean by development results? Our role, as you all know, as a trusted partner of African governments and the private sector, is to engage in policy dialogue, to provide knowledge, capacity building, technical assistance, institutional support. But our core business is really about financing high-quality investments. These investments result in tangible output, such as the number of kilometers of roads that are built, megawatts of electricity generated, number of youth training or skills enhancement programs that are delivered. But the true measure of success for the African Development Bank is the impact that these investments are provided to communities and businesses across the continent. So what we measure as a success would be the number of jobs for youth that are created, the number of small businesses, women-led SMEs that are established through our financing, established and supported through our financing. The volume of trade flows increased as a result of infrastructure development financed by the African Development Bank and partners. This is really the true measure of development results of success for the African Development Bank. And I can see that Victor is signaling that my time is up, but let me perhaps just illustrate this point by one specific example, and then I'll stop here. You will recall during the opening ceremonies yesterday, His Excellency President Ruto, and in fact President Adesina as well, made several references to the last mile connectivity project in Kenya. So this important project basically was designed to, and I'm sure VP Kariuki, who's been leading the team working on this one, might come back to this. So I hope I'm not pulling the carpet under your feet. But just to demonstrate what we mean by development results, so this is a project designed to connect low-income households and businesses across many counties of Kenya. And the outcomes delivered through this project include, for instance, 300,000 households, I think benefiting about 1.6 million people that have been now connected to the grid, but also 5,000 small businesses, including women-led SMEs, that are connected now to the grid, and now basically stimulating job growth and economic prosperity in these communities. So this is truly, for us, what success means for the African Development Bank. I hope I wasn't too long.
Thank you very much, Armand. I love what you said a few moments ago. You said the true metric of the bank's success lies in how its investment impact communities. And that really is so true. That's the bottom line of why the African Development Bank exists. Now, you did exceed the allotted time by a few minutes, but since I only have one question for you, I'll give you a pass. But for the other members of our panel, I'm going to ask, because there's so much that we need to cover in the limited amount of time, that you limit your responses to a maximum of 3 minutes. Do we have a deal? Yes, deal we do. So I'll go on to Marie-Laure Akin-Alugbade. You know, it's only natural that my next question goes to you. As it turns out, we've heard during the opening ceremony, the governor's dialogue, as well as during the president's opening speech, that in 2023 proved to be an exceptional year for the bank's operations. Now, given the limitations of time, what would you consider to be some of the key highlights in 3 minutes or less? Tall order.
Merci beaucoup. Comment je fais ici, là? Merci beaucoup, Victor. En effet, l'année 2023 a été une année exceptionnelle pour les opérations du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement. En 2023, vous l'avez entendu, en réponse aux demandes des pays membres régionaux pour des ressources en plus large volume,
for larger volume of resources, we were able to approve some 10.1 billion US dollars, 30% increase as compared to 2022. And this is the second highest level of approvals in the bank group history. In addition to this, we have also set other records, which I'd like to underscore here. So, record in approvals for multinational operations. These are operations including various countries. So, in the upward of 2.9 billion US dollars, another record set in the history of the bank. I'm sure you've also heard about projects such as the railways between Burundi, the DRC, and Tanzania. This is an instance where the bank was able to demonstrate its nimbleness as a lead manager for this project, demonstrating synergies between the resources of the AfDB, the African Development Fund, leveraging innovative resources such as partial credit guarantees in order to deliver this financing totaling $2.9 billion. We've also worked on a multinational project between Mali, which is a country in transition, grappling with huge challenges, and Mauritania, which is a country that unfortunately doesn't have access to much resources within the ADF. So we were able to leverage Desert to Power. We mobilized $300 million from the ADF, concessional resources, as well as co-financing resources. We were also able to innovate with the largest amount or allocation for partial risk guarantees for several countries. So in the amount of $1.2 billion we were able to mobilize 1.5 times that amount to finance projects, particularly in the social area. We've also been innovative in 2023 as we were able to deliver 24% increase in disbursements because all of these allocations would be dead letter if we did not disperse them. This is the only way to reach these projects and populations.
Thank you. I love the passion. I love the sense of engagement. And again, I believe that's a reflection of what you know really is happening on the ground. Innovative partial credit guarantees, a 30% increase in approvals, reflecting strong demand for what we do have to offer as a bank. Now, to the extent that you don't keep within the 3-minute schedule that we have for each one of the panelists, I will deduct one of the questions down the road. I have, on average, I think about 3 questions for each one of you. So again, kindly work with us. Keep within the time, very much appreciated. I'm going to go next to Hassatu. One of the things that the last 4 years have shown us is that in the twinkling of an eye, life can change. The world has changed. We've had to deal with COVID, obviously, with conflict, with climate changes, and most recently, significant increases in interest rates. These have had a tremendous impact on the world in general, but also on Africa in particular. So recently, the African Development Bank has sought additional callable capital from its shareholders. So I'm just curious, what does this mean? Should we be concerned? And what does it say about the bank's financial strength? Now, I'm only being the angel's advocate here, based on what I've heard during some of the other sessions. So, Hassatu, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
And if you could speak directly into the microphone. Okay. Thank you.
Is it better?
Certainly is.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good morning to all. So let me start by saying that the African Development Bank is financially strong. We have a very strong financial profile, and this was confirmed by credit rating agencies through their rating reports last year. And actually, the credit rating agency Standard & Poor's upgraded the standalone credit profile of the African Development Bank to AAA. So what does it mean to have a standalone credit profile of AAA? It means simply that the African Development Bank, from S&P's perspective, no longer needs the support of its shareholder. We are AAA on a standalone basis. But why have we been seeking additional callable capital? There's been lots of discussion throughout these annual meetings about credit rating agencies. Fitch, in particular, has an approach which is different from the others and which requires that we have substantial amount of AAA callable capital. Unfortunately, many of our AAA rated shareholders have been downgraded. France, UK, Canada, the US, Finland, and others. So basically, we need to replace this AAA global capital by additional volumes. We basically went from 28% of our balance sheet being made of AAA global capital to 10%. It is not tenable. So we have to find a new solution. But in the meantime, we needed to replenish our global capital. And I would like to thank our Board of Directors and our Board of Governors for the approval yesterday with overwhelming support of a AAA global capital increase, of a global capital increase for the African Development Bank, $116 billion. But were we not weighted by Fitch, we would have been in a position today to be able to fund additional lending for $21 billion. So this is an issue, which is why we are working in order to have a standalone credit profile of AAA by Fitch. Because again, we cannot rely on AAA global capital. We have to build the bank internal capacity to stand on its own.
Thank you very much, Hassatu. Very informative, very inspirational also, and congratulations to you and your team. Now, my next question is to Solomon Quainer. The more integrated Africa is, the closer it is to fulfilling its true potential. And I think more than any other MDB or a development finance institution in the world, this bank has invested more in infrastructure projects than any other. I believe I'm correct in that assessment. I see a smile, but if I'm wrong, I stand corrected. I'll leave that to you in just a few moments. But I'd like for you to highlight for us some of the most significant projects that the bank realized or initiated in 2023. There are tons of them, but which ones stick out for you?
Okay, thank you very much, Victor, for that. So definitely we're known as the infrastructure bank, but we have high five priorities that includes industrializing Africa and also connecting Africa. Now, one of the key projects that we've initiated with an MOU last year was the Lobito Corridor, where we bring everything together. It's a regional corridor in partnership with PGI of the US, the European Union, the Africa Finance Corporation, and 3 of our countries, Angola, Zambia, and DRC. It's really built around, the green minerals. However, for us, it's important to be exported as raw commodities, but that we industrialize within the Africa space. So that's the anchor of the project. But in addition, we're going to really look to build special agro-processing zones. We're going to look to build, industrial parks to actually have industrialization within that corridor itself. So for us, this is an example of where we take a core competency of infrastructure, combine it really with the focus going forward of industrialization, using the principle of the African Continental Trade Area, which underlines it, to really create economic corridors that would really promote economic growth going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, I'm going to come to Kevin Kariuki. Globally, some of the most vulnerable countries in the world, as far as the impacts of climate change are concerned, are in Africa. Now, to compound matters, making them really worse, is that they have very limited access to capital. So my question to you is, what is the bank doing to help provide these countries with much needed finance to deal with the impacts of climate change?
Thank you very much, Victor, for the question. But allow me to first contextualize Africa's climate change as well as climate finance, because this relates to the question that you raised. According to the Global Center on Adaptation, Africa's climate change is locked in for the next 20 years. At the same time, the World Meteorological Organization indicates that Africa is warming 50% faster than anywhere else in the world. What this means is that Africa will continue to experience the increasingly frequent and severe impacts of climate change. Last year, we had Cyclone Freddy land twice in a month in Southern Africa. This year, to be precise, a few weeks ago, we had floods in Kenya and Tanzania. At the same time, in Southern Africa, you have a very severe drought situation. Yet, Africa, despite contributing only 3% of historical greenhouse gas emissions, bears the brunt for climate change and accounts for 9 out of 10 of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. But meanwhile, Africa accounted for only $30 billion, or 2.5% of global climate finance, which is a tiny fraction of the $277 billion that is required for climate action on the continent. So this is what has motivated the bank to make strenuous efforts to raise significant climate finance for Africa. First, what we did is that we committed to raising allocating 40% of our investments as climate finance between 2020 and 2025. You'll be pleased to note that last year, or rather to date, we have mobilized $14 billion and raised, including a record of $5.85 billion last year as climate finance, which constituted 55% against the target of 40%. So I think what I would need to say is that we are on target for to achieving the $14 billion, the $25 billion that we confirmed earlier on. So other bank efforts include the Global Center on Adaptation, where we are raising $25 billion for adaptation action by 2025. In addition, we have the Climate Action Window, which was mentioned earlier by the governor from Germany. And we also have the issue of the guarantees that are going to be critical in raising additional financing, because unless we innovate, we are unlikely to be able to move the needle of climate finance on the continent. So we have...
Now, I'm just going to, I really want to jump in here.
Yeah.
Something that you said earlier just triggered a thought in my mind. President Ruto said during the opening ceremony that the projections are that over the next 7 years, this region will continue to see the very unusual weather patterns that it has experienced. And we saw the devastating floods that took place here. But you've extended that almost 3 times to say that these weather patterns are locked in almost for the next 20 years. My question is this: for a continent that suffers the most, is there really an understanding and appreciation of the significant need that Africa has in the global community? How do we surmount the issue of insufficient capital? How do we accelerate that? Just very shortly, very succinctly, tell us what kind of engagements are taking place on the global scene.
I think there are two ways of looking at it, Victor. First of all, I think, as Professor Urama mentioned earlier in the preceding session, there has to be a change in the climate finance architecture globally. Because today, 90% of climate finance goes to mitigation. So we need to be able to help our countries adapt more or better by increasing the amount of adaptation finance on the continent. But what I wanted to also mention here is that the bank on its own will make extensive efforts to be able to mobilize greater climate finance for the continent. One of the things that we did as part of our 2020 to 2021 to 2030 climate change and green growth framework is to commit to try and help Africa increase its access to climate finance from 3% to 10%. And then, but all these issues will not be able to move the needle of climate finance. What we actually
even
need,
at 10%.
Yeah, to 10.
Even at 10%.
Even the 10% would not move the needle of climate finance. What we actually need are innovative solutions, and as I think we've heard here, that the bank is an innovation bank. So one of the things that we are doing is that we are looking to, we've conceptualized a number of very innovative schemes, that, such as the guarantee mechanisms. For example, the $1 billion guarantee with UK's FCDO that we approved last year. We also have the issuance of sustainability bonds, similar to the 750 million sustainable hybrid bond that we issued early this year and was subscribed by orders of magnitude. Then I think I've mentioned the climate action window, and this is a small but very impactful intervention, because one of the things that came from COP26 was that everybody said we need to double adaptation finance, but they always retorted, where are the projects, where are the adaptation projects? And what we've done through the climate action window is to demonstrate that there is indeed significant amounts of adaptation projects that we can actually be able to present. This year alone, based on the first call for proposals, we have actually today we can actually be able to finance $1 billion of adaptation projects, but all we have from the climate action window is $429 million. So I think, and the last one, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, I think the most impactful way of raising significant climate finance will be through the rechanneling of SDRs. I think that is what is going to be a game changer, translating the billions maybe to the trillions. Let me stop there, Victor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you. Exciting developments. I'm going to come next to Beth Dunford. Over the last few years, we've seen the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine, and the war shows really no sign of abating. This is a region that Africa in particular has depended on for grains, for oils, for many years, and this obviously has affected food supplies, not just globally, but particularly for us on the continent. Now, to blunt the effect of this, the African Development Bank launched an African Emergency Food Production Facility 2 years ago. What's been happening since then? What kind of impact are we seeing, or have we seen, from the launch of that particular facility?
Great. Thank you very much, Victor. And indeed, when a war thousands of miles away really, throws Africa into distress, increases levels of food security, it was really a call to action moment to help us realize how dependent Africa is on importation just to meet basic needs. And so the African Emergency Food Production Facility, $1.5 billion food production facility, was really an immediate call to action to say, quickly, Africans can produce more food themselves if given the right tools to do so. So again, with record speed, the $1.5 billion facility, we sprung it into action. We approved a record 37 operations in just 3 months after the approval of the facility. It was a lot of work by many people in this room, for sure. And although there are still 2 seasons left in the African Emergency Food Production Facility, we've seen impressive results. And again, this facility came at a time when our Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation program, which is really our platform to deliver improved climate-adapted seeds to farmers at scale, was up and running and had proven successes. And so this emergency facility was a way to take that at scale to reach millions of farmers. So it came at the right time. We've been able to deliver 410,000 metric tons of certified climate-adapted seeds, 2.5 million metric tons of fertilizer, and that's to 11 million farmers across the continent, across 32 African countries. Importantly, this emergency assistance has resulted in the increase of agricultural production, this boost of 34 million metric tons, valued at $13 billion. That's tremendous impact very quickly to really scale up food production on the continent of Africa. So importantly, to really increase, well, Swazi was going to clap. I think we need to clap for that. It was a tremendous achievement.
And I think one of the reasons why it is important is because there were certain projected shortfalls from the conflict. How have we been able to overcome that? Were we able to meet or exceed that anticipated shortfall?
So I think that with this production, with this increased production, we were able in many countries. We saw Ethiopia go from a net importer of wheat to a net exporter of wheat. So I think you have several examples of countries really rising to the challenge to produce their own food. And what we're really looking to do is take the success of that dramatic increase in production over those couple of years and really bring out the sustainability of this effort. Within the African Emergency Food Production Facility, we were able to work with 24 countries to either establish or improve their ICT platforms. So we know that farmers, the efficiency and the success of farmers efficiently receiving inputs or gaining access to markets, gaining access to extension information is really not possible without a strong ICT system. And then, so we really enabled that to grow during this facility. We also worked on reviewing or really helping to develop 41 policies that were really critical for agricultural transformation and produce seed production roadmaps for key staples across the continent. The sustainability of the African Emergency Food Production Facility, I think, really came to fore in the Dakar 2 Summit, where President Adesina, co-hosting with the government of Dakar, brought together 34 heads of state and government, which came together to develop country food and agricultural delivery compacts that set out targeted and costed plans to invest in agricultural transformation in each country. And with these targeted action plans, we've been able to support an investment in these plans. In 2023, we invested as a bank $740 million. And this year, as we're ramping up our support to these compacts, we're on track to deliver $2.9 billion in assistance to support the development of these compacts. And importantly, just as we're looking at the sort of leadership and importance of that to drive this effort forward, 8 of these countries have established presidential delivery councils at the head of state level to really drive investment, resources, human resources, institutional resources, financial resources across governments towards this important effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth. Again, very exciting developments. I'm going to tell on your colleagues here on the panel. They kept on looking at me, trying to signal that you've exceeded your 3 minutes. But I was glad.
I went too far, too long. Too much to talk
I was glad to go along with you because these indeed are significant developments. So thank you very, very much for that. So I'm going to come next to Kevin Orama. Just curious, domestic resource mobilization and public finance management are really critical for debt management and also for transforming African economies. Critical, really, really important. To that extent, what is it that the African Development Bank is doing to help support African countries in this regard? 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Victor. That important question. Domestic revenue mobilization and public financial management, as we've seen even in the report we've done, is actually the fundamentals for any country to be able to transform its economy, because you have to be able to have the fiscal capacity within your country to even be able to leverage the private sector. And once you have that clarity with regard to having your macroeconomic policy frameworks stable, then you also be able to get foreign direct investments and other things that come with it. So the bank recognizes this, and in its 10-year strategy, but also have specialized strategies that have been developed to focus on that, specifically the strategy for economic governance in Africa, but also a capacity development strategy for Africa and a knowledge management strategy. And in all these strategies, we focus squarely on domestic revenue mobilization because of its criticality for driving development on the continent. And we do this in a 4-pronged approach. One is knowledge analytics that we provide to countries so that they can have proper diagnostics of both their public financial management systems, but their capacity, their tax capacity, but also other avenues that they can mobilize revenue through non-tax revenue options, like several issues that we have all been talking about even in the report. And such reports like the one we launched today, we also, in addition to the African Economic Outlook report, we also develop a regional economic outlook report and a national report we call country-focused reports to deep dive on each of these countries, because there's a heterogeneity in different countries, as we have already talked about. And then the second thing we do is we have established a public financial management academy specifically to address the whole value chain of public financial management, starting from domestic revenue mobilization, but also prudent budget management, budget and expenditure management, sustainable borrowing, deepening capital markets that we see is very important for this, but also macro fiscal stability policies that countries need, tailored to each country's needs, and then also strengthening supreme audit and accounting institutions and audit institutions across the continent to plug all these illicit financial leakages that we've been talking about. So, but we also do program-based operations. And through these program-based operations, we take the knowledge we've generated and the analysis diagnostics we do with countries to identify what are the weakest links in those countries in terms of policy reforms and institutional reforms required. And then through these operations, we did last year 18 program-based operations, 15 of them focusing on specific reforms in sectors, but 3 of them were budget support. And this was to the value of $1.75 billion US dollars for the last year alone. And we normally focus on we discussed across several countries, so I'm not going to mention all of them because of time. I see you already touching your microphone. And so another thing we do is policy dialogue, having really speaking truth to power. That's how I will call it, because of the respect and the trust that the African Development Bank Group has. We have the opportunity to really have tough discussions with countries on things that needs to be done in order to improve their domestic revenue mobilization.
Let me just ask you this question here. I mean, this is all fantastic. For quite a number of years, the African Economic Outlook report was published in conjunction with other partners. Over the last probably 5 years, 6 years, that has been a standalone project for the African Development Bank. How much of a global reference point has that become for your complex and for the bank?
Thank you, Victor. In this case, I really want to commend my team that have been working with me on this report, and also the previous leaders of the economic complex, but more specifically, President Adesina. A lot of what you see in the economic outlook reports we do, he reads them letter by letter, every comma and every footstop. And you can understand when he gives his opening remarks, because he has very clear passion that knowledge that is embedded in local realities is the basis for development. We cannot fly a plane with one wing. So we cannot just continue to fund infrastructure development without thinking about the knowledge that have to drive the development going forward. The specific question you ask, how influential has the economic outlook report become? I have a very busy life with my teams. It's immediately after every lunch, speaking to the media, but also several invitations by our development partners. This particular one, thanks to the executive director from Japan, Japan has already booked for us to come and present that to them. And the one of last year, thanks to E.D. Knudsen that is here, we also went to all the 5 Nordic countries to present this to high-level policymakers to shape their strategies on Africa. So those reports help in several ways. For African countries, what we need to do domestically in order to improve our macroeconomic framework, but for our partners, what they need to do to help Africa, but also the opportunities that are there for investments, both from the private and public sectors.
Thank you very much. Please give our panelists a round of applause. One of the things that I think really has come out of everything that you've heard here really is the passion with which they communicate the work that they're involved in. And that just simply tells me that what you do is not just a job, it's a passion. It really is, and it comes out very, very clearly. I'm going to jump over to Hasatu for my next question. You've mentioned, and we've heard quite a bit here at the annual meetings, that the bank's financial performance in 2023 has been pretty strong. How important is financial performance for an institution like the African Development Bank?
Thank you. Thank you for asking this question. So yes, we had a stellar performance in 2023, $536 million in net income before distribution, $472 million for allocable income, the highest ever for this institution. And income generation is important for various reasons. First, it allows us to reinvest into the bank a portion of that income, which is going to be used to fund additional projects. So it reinforces the bank's capital base in order to allow it to do more. Second, a portion of that income is allocated to key continent-wide initiatives. So we do make contributions, grant contributions, and donate to the African Development Fund. We've been able to seed institutions like Africa 50. We are also supporting our countries when they have catastrophes and disasters. For example, last year in Morocco, we've supported in case of flooding, in cases of locust invasion. We also fund project preparation facilities, which are key and a catalyst for allowing us to do transformative projects. But very important as well is the fact that the income that we generate from private sector investment, from our treasury portfolio, is exactly what allows us to offer to our sovereign clients prices at subsidized cost. So we don't make profit on our loans to our sovereigns. We give them a AAA cost, thanks to our credit rating, and we allocate a small portion of our cost. So that has to be subsidized, which is why we need the income from the private sector and the treasury investment. And another thing that I want to talk about is that our income also has allowed us to fund the Africa Legal Support Facility. And I'm sure that the audience knows how important and critical that facility has been. So let me stop here.
Thank you very much, Hasatu. Well, I think that's a natural segue to Marie-Laure. The bank does have a 10-year strategy, and Kevin alluded to that earlier. But given the bank's great financial performance in 2023, if I was a member country here, I would have heightened expectations of what it is that the bank can do for me as a country. So how does the bank intend to respond in terms of better operational efficiency and faster and more responsive delivery to our member countries, particularly given the resources that we have available?
Thank you very much, Victor. And indeed, our countries are asking us, our clients, our shareholders are asking us to be a better institution. They would like us to be, yes, able to provide financing at scale. And I think Hasatu has said it already, with formidable capacity to innovate in the way we raise funds and we sweat the balance sheet of the bank. But our shareholders and our clients also expect us to be more nimble, agile, to continue to be innovative, to continue to be extremely relevant to the issues as they occur. And this is what we heard from Beth. We were responsive when the food crisis hit. We were responsive when the pandemic hit. And we are really constantly innovating to really adapt. But I think that we heard, I hope we all heard President Ruto yesterday indicate that he was also very satisfied of the bank, and this is why he's planning to invest more as shares become available, which means that we are already a good bank, and I want to say even a very good bank. Last year, you've seen it, we scaled up the volume of financing. Last year, we innovated. We really leveraged the instruments that are available. Last year, we responded to our clients' needs to really get the regional integration agenda move forward. This is why we had a record approval of regional multinational operation. Our clients also want us to work better as a system. And they would like us to be able to do that at the country level. This is why we believe indeed in the country platform. This is not a new concept, but this is one that is critically important today because we want to be sure that the resources that are raised are truly utilized in the most effective way at the country level. Our clients are also asking us to be, I think, continue to be innovative. I think we are already a very innovative bank. But because of the complexity of the challenges, and let me just take an example like insecurity. Insecurity, unfortunately, is a phenomenon that we have to live with. But we all know that without security, there cannot be any development. So we are also innovating in this area and looking at different ways to be able to help secure the environment in which some of these projects are happening. Because they are happening at the community level, it is extremely important to find constantly being agile. I think one area where we think we can continue to become better is to make sure that the quality of the projects that we really design, and I would like to use maybe the expression by the governor Alamine yesterday, his PDF model. We want to be able to better prepare projects. We want to be able to de-risk them. We have instruments to do that. And we want to be able to find them. So let me focus on the P, which is prepare projects. And I think Asatu has said it. Last year, really, we ramped up the use of the project preparation facility. We saw actually an increase of 40% in the use. And this is really what gives us a very good assurance that the projects that we are preparing are well prepared from a technical point of view, from a financial point of view, and also from an environmental and social safeguard point of view. And we will continue to do more of that. We will also decentralize further because clients want us close to them. They want us not just decentralized for the sake of decentralizing, but they would like to have the skill mix, the size, available in each country. And I think this is certainly an area where we can do better.
Thank you very much for your leadership in this regard. I'm going to try and conflate two questions into one. And I'd like for Solomon Quena and Beth Dunford to speak to us because they're related. But first to Solomon. The United Nations defines youth as people aged between 15 to 24 years. And Africa's population as a whole, as we all know, is very young, with 60% of the entire continent being under 25, making it the youngest continent in the world. As huge as those numbers are, by 2030, it is projected that the numbers of youth in Africa will increase by 42% in relation to its population makeup. So my question is this. Given these huge projected numbers, what has the African Development Bank done in 2023? What will it do down the road? And to Beth, about 11 million African youth graduate every single year from higher education on the continent with very few job opportunities. They're not able to find decent work. And in large part, there's also a skills mismatch. So from where you sit, what is it that the bank is doing to support the youth in this regard? So first to Solomon, and if Beth could dovetail into his intervention, that would be very, very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Victor. I mean, when it comes really to, the youth bulge and the youth demographic, I defer a lot to VP Beth in terms of all the work that we're doing to really skill up the youth, to prepare them for jobs, and also even to support youth entrepreneurs. However, in terms of innovation, one of the ways in which we have complemented what VP Beth's, Human Capital Department is working on is an innovation that we call the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. And one of the reasons we've arrived at this is really because of the consistent market failure in supporting youth entrepreneurs with the right products at the right time. And so the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank has taken a look really at the life journey of youth entrepreneurs, and the gaps where we feel that we can best support is really at that early stage equity point. And then a lot of youth entrepreneurs tend to be asset light, and so at the latter stage where they need debt, they don't have collateral, so we are also supporting with credit guarantees. But most youth entrepreneurs have not run businesses before, so they need a lot of capacity building. Business development services, how to set up their accounts, how to manage third-party funds, how to access markets. And so what we're doing with the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank is really creating an ecosystem aggregator. The idea is not to create an institution that will be the biggest and the best, supporting youth entrepreneurs, but it's really to catalyze venture capital firms to come in a lot earlier, to really work with youth entrepreneurs. It's also to catalyze financial institutions, whether commercial banks or MFIs, to really, support youth entrepreneurs on a pooled basis. And then in addition is to provide the right capacity building. So we see this really as a very structured, systematic, sustainable, and scalable model. We've piloted this in Liberia. Unfortunately, because of the elections, it's taken us time to operationalize that. We also, received our board approval this year, to do this in Ethiopia. We're going to look at, a few more countries to have a representative sample across Africa. And then we're really going to focus on operationalization, because when you innovate, it's a great idea. You're filling a market gap, but you have to make sure that you deliver. So we're going to focus really on operationalization.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Beth?
Thank you. Just to add quickly to what Solomon said, if 11 million Africans are entering the job market each year and there are only 3.7 million jobs created each year, there's obviously a big issue. And I think supporting financially youth entrepreneurs is very, very important. Also, skilling Africans to be able to excel in these as entrepreneurs, but also to engage with industry that is severely lacking in qualified skills workers. So our skilling approach is very targeted. Just to give a couple of examples so you can understand what we're doing. In Rwanda, we recently approved investment in the Center for Aviation, Airline and Aviation Services Center, really help Rwanda scale up its investments to become a regional or continental hub for the airline industry in Kigali. So I think these are the types of targeted investments that we're working on these days. Also, a recent approval of a railway project in Uganda contains a skill component. We need skilled workers not only to build the railway, but also to maintain it. We are currently designing a large agricultural value chain program in DRC. And in our assessment, we recognize that in order for this to be successful, the absolutely first thing we need to do is invest in skilling of workers across the entire agricultural value chain. So again, skilling is becoming more prevalent in everything that we do, either targeted to industries or within sort of our broader, mainly infrastructure investments.
And I'm just curious, in working with the different country managers that we have, are you scaling this up in each of the member countries? Is there a demand for these kind of services? If not, what is the bank doing to ensure that we're able to replicate this across the board?
So there's tremendous demand. I mean, over the last decade, we've invested almost $1 billion, and the demand just keeps coming in. I think that more and more you're seeing when operations come to board, they have a skilling component across the continent. And then again, there are certain specific skills projects that we develop with industries that need specific targeted attention, such as
segments of the African population are youth, which we've just referenced, as well as women. So I'd be remiss if I didn't use this opportunity to ask you about AFAWA, the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa. To what extent really is this significant initiative changing the financial landscape for women in business on the continent?
Great.
Just very briefly,
Very
2
briefly.
minutes.
2 minutes. I think that, the president stood up a FAWA to address the $49 billion gap that women-owned SMEs face on the African continent. And it works in two main ways. One is to work with women to help them become bankable, to be able to, develop good business plans, to network, and to be able to enter the formal financial market and receive financing. We also work with banks to help them become what we call womenable, right? Helping them to de-risk finance. De-risk, of course, it's a perceived risk because actually loans to women-owned SMEs have proven to be quite profitable. But again, de-risking helps sort of facilitate that entry into this market and also support financial institutions to design products that really meet the needs of women with flexible collateral requirements, longer repayment rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think also incentives for first-time borrowers to really bring them into the financial market. So this is really changing the financial landscape. I think that right now we're working with 169 financial institutions across the continent of Africa. We have dispersed $720 million into the hands of 18,000 women-owned SMEs. Again, and we're just getting going. We've approved $1.7 billion that's on its way out to women. That was at the end of last year, so we expect this number to grow dramatically. And again, the point of this is really to enable women who have creative ideas to be able to go to financial institutions and get the financing that they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very encouraging. Thank you for that report there and intervention. I'm going to try and conflate two questions into one for Kevin Kariuki. As we know, Africa is the smallest emitter of global greenhouse gas emissions. So what is the relevance of an energy transition for Africa, and what role is the African Development Bank playing in this regard? But add to that recent interventions with regards to clean cooking. The president launched a major initiative in Paris recently, very well attended. How critical is that? Two questions in one, so I'll give you 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Victor.
Following which, I believe we only have sufficient enough time for 3 more questions, and we will bring 2 more questions. Actually, it's a wrap. Okay, so the word from the Senior Vice President is that after this, we'll give Hassatu Nsele the final word. So, Kevin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Victor. If you consider the amounts of emissions that Africa accounts for, I always say that energy transition in most of Africa's context is indeed a misnomer. And it should be all about embedding low carbon development trajectory while providing electricity access to the 600 million people without that access. And here we would be leveraging on our abundant renewable energy sources, including 60% of the world's best solar resources that remain largely untapped. And hence, African countries call for almost quintupling of the renewable energy capacity to 300 gigawatts by 2030 at the African Climate Summit last year in this very room, which is greater ambition than the tripling that was called for at COP28. But to actualize this ambition, Africa must mobilize our tracked renewable energy investments at unprecedented scale and speed. And this is because, according to the International Energy Agency, we require almost $100 billion every year up to 2030 in order to meet our energy needs. But Africa only accounts for only 2% or $6 billion of renewable energy investments every year.
So given this backdrop, what is the bank doing?
So
just very quickly.
That's what I was coming to. And then what has happened is that the bank has had to double down on supporting renewables. And the first thing is that today, renewables account for 87% of our energy portfolio since 2016. We also have the $533 million Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, or just SEFA, that was actually mentioned by a number of governors, has been mentioned by a number of governors throughout this week. And through CEFA, we hope to be able to leverage up to $15 billion to provide another 10,000 megawatts of energy and provide electricity access to another 5 million customers. And indeed, let me just mention that last year, CEFA actually saved 2 very landmark transactions from unraveling amidst significant EPC price increases on account of the post-COVID supply chain disruptions and the issue of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So the bank is also implementing, this is very important to mention, the $20 billion Desert to Power that will generate almost 10,000 megawatts of solar power throughout the Sahel. And here I want to mention a project that VP Mariro mentioned, the 1,400 kilometer Mali-Mauritania interconnector, which will also embed about 100 megawatts of solar power. But in addition, and you've heard this many, many times this week, it's been a constant theme, you've heard of the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which will generate almost sort of $10 billion of green investments throughout the country. But to go to your last question, Africa's energy transition will not be complete without addressing the issue of clean cooking. And why I say this is because we will be moving from using biomass, wood, and agricultural waste to clean cooking solutions. And just to tell you, the importance of this is that it is not just an energy transition solution. It is a health solution. It will save at least 600,000 lives every year. It will save for Africa at least 100,000 hectares, 100 million hectares every year. And most importantly, and unknown to many, it will cause a reduction of 900 gigatons of CO2 emissions. And just to contextualize, which is equal to half of all planes and half of all ships that ply the world today.
So in 60 seconds or less, what was the outcome of the launch of the initiative in Paris? What's the major takeaway?
The beauty about the bank, we've said we are always an innovative bank. For us, the journey did not start in Paris. At COP28, the bank president announced that we will be able, working with our countries, to mobilize $2 billion over 10 years for clean cooking solutions. And what this did, and I say this without any fear of contradiction because I discussed with the Norwegians, this catalyzed an additional $2.2 billion from international community on account of the seed we planted at COP28. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Indeed, a round of applause. And my very last question is to Hassatu. Repeatedly, we've heard the phrase, the bank is not only a solutions bank, but an innovation bank. And in 2023, we've heard about quite a number of innovations that the African development has led. These are global innovations. I didn't say regional, global. You're pushing the boundaries of financial innovation and showing us what is possible. This includes many firsts within the MDB space. So how important is innovation for the bank, and how does that play out for the continent?
Thank you very much. So
in 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, I will do it. So the bank has really been at the forefront of innovation, and not because the G20 asked us to do it, because this is exactly what we needed in order to catalyze our impact and to accelerate development into the African continent. And we are very proud of the pride with which our stakeholders talk about our achievements. So these are, yes, MDB first, that have unlocked and will continue to unlock billions of dollars for the continent. Exposure exchange agreements, synthetic securitization, balance sheet optimization through hybrid capital, SDR channeling, the idea of hybrid capital to be used by a multilateral development bank. These are, and I just want to say something for the SDR. So it's really been a baobab approach. You've heard about the baobab approach, and I need to thank my incredible finance team, our ecosystem, our legal department, our risk departments, our operations departments, the board of directors, my colleagues here, and in particular, our senior vice president, Swazi Shabalala, and the president of the African Development Bank. The UN, UNECA, shareholders, think tanks, civil society organizations, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Center for Global Development, it's really been a baobab approach. Another thing that I need to say is that I told the president of the bank that I was weary sometimes of his phone calls, wondering what seemingly impossible idea would fall on my lap. SDR channeling was the brainchild of the president, and a black box that we were able to unlock, which now leads light in terms of contributions from shareholders, and we're starting now a discussion to make sure that they contribute. And last, we are a solutions bank. We are transforming or changing the way that we approach our operations. Marie-Laure talked about the Standard Gauge Railways project. We're taking a mandated lead arranger. So it's not just how much we can do with our own funds, but what solutions we can bring in order to make sure that the project is implemented. So for the SDR, we're bringing export credit agencies, commercial banks, guarantors, and so forth. Your question, what's new? I need to talk about what's new. It's
Can you do that in 30 seconds?
Yeah, security index investment bond to help, among others, invest and rebuild infrastructure that have been damaged by insecurity and conflict. A guarantee platform, and the president talked about that, and it's going to put together all our instruments, political risk guarantee, partial risk credit guarantees, and others. But it's not just going to be for the African Development Bank, but for Africa, and a synthetic securitization vehicle to credit in private sector, not just for the bank, but for DFIs in a synthetic platform. And last, a shout out to Max Njai, who's the director.
Right, that is happening at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, the Africa Development Bank annual meeting. And from there, we now want to turn the crack to Karen, where President Dr. William Ruto is there, and he's presiding over the KDF graduation ceremony. That is the National Defense College, which is happening at Karen. Let's just cross over there and listen in.
We pray for peace in our beloved country, Kenya, in the region and the world at large. May peace and tranquility prevail in the countries of origin of all those who are graduating here today. Oh Allah, as we leave this place, we put our hope and trust in your able hands. Oh Allah, enrich us with knowledge, adorn us with wisdom, honor us with patience and piety. May your peace and blessings be upon all the prophets and those that follow them until the day of judgment. We ask all this through your holy names and attributes. Amen.
God our Father, today we pray for these graduates who receive the highest recognition from our President and Commander-in-Chief. They have met the challenge and remain steadfast to their commitments in their studies. We thank you for granting them focus, direction, strength, and endurance. You created the knowledge and understanding they have mastered. This graduation opens another door for them. As you have led them in the past, lead them now into the future. We pray in the words of Scripture, bless them indeed, expand their territory. Let your grace and benevolence be with them. may they never lack. Today we bless our graduates. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
You may put back your headdress and please be seated. Thank you very much, the clergy, for the prayers. Your Excellency, sir, distinguished guests, participants of Course 26 of the year 2023-2024, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome all of you here today. We truly appreciate your presence. Your Excellency, sir, we shall now have a valedictory, what we could call a parting shot, some words of farewell, or some nostalgic moments experienced by the course 2026 of 2023-2024, brought up by Dr. Chesa Were from the Ministry of Health on behalf of the participants of course 2026 of the year 2023-2024. Dr. Were, please.
Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Kenya and the Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Chesa Ian Were from the Ministry of Health, Kenya. Your Excellency, sir, in the next few minutes, I will demonstrate the National Defense College's innovative approach to knowledge transfer and succession management as I, the last born of this course, delivers this valedictory speech on behalf of my 65 other participants. The Vanguard, Your Excellency, is the tree planting course that took cue from your directive to Green Kenya. Cumulatively, the Vanguard, including our faculty, has planted over 1,500 trees within the Kikuyu ecosystem during our time here, and an additional 100 fruit trees in these grounds. Thanks to our forest whisperer and the hawk-eyed bundi, we, the family participants, have somehow managed to extract saplings from their beds without accidentally strangling them. Your Excellency, sir, despite my chronological disadvantage, I've gathered a wealth of knowledge from this incredible group. The wisdom of the artillerymen and the art of timekeeping from the infantrymen. The naval officers have taught me their interesting communication style, where you are spoken to by everyone simultaneously, and all you could say is, very good, carry on. The airmen have taught me to dress neat and in gist. The logisticians have me speaking long-range planning, while the armormen, chonjo, always moving forward. The signalers have ensured my radars are properly positioned. And the engineer, Siakamu, inspired by Maurice Wilson, and the seemingly disturbed constable addressed Kinganjo instructor, took us through undulant treks from the depths of the Rift Valley to the heights of the Aberdares and across slippery slopes of Namanga Hills, proving that mountains are but molehills, scalable to the peaks. What of the hard-working spirit from the National Youth Service, or the ultra-diligence revenue officers? Your Excellency, my time here is best experienced and described, for I live a student of the best and a living legacy of shared wisdom. Your Excellency, the college's 49-week crucible had moments where the sheer volume of geopolitical strategy threatened to bury us all under an avalanche of acronyms and hypothetical conflicts. But amidst the late-night study sessions, we, a diverse group of Kenya and friendly nations, transformed from individual problem solvers into a collaborative force. We've learned from each other's experiences, challenged each other's assumptions, and together honed the skills needed to navigate the complex labyrinth of statecraft. Your Excellency, the benefits of this program extend far beyond the walls of this esteemed institution. The knowledge we've acquired isn't merely theoretical. It's a potent weapon in our collective arsenal, ready to be deployed in service of a safer, more secure future for Kenya and our allies. We've delved into the intricacies of cyber warfare, untangled the knots of international negotiation, and formulated solutions to seemingly intractable challenges. We are now equipped to address the ever-evolving threats faced by our nations, working together to bridge the divides and foster cooperation on a global scale. Your Excellency, sir, when we first arrived here, full of this nervous energy, we were met by a commandant emeritus, a formidable general with a very straightening stare. He could literally lift you off. His brief welcome speech felt more like a pre-flight checklist, ensuring that we were buckled in and cleared for the academic turbulence ahead. Thankfully, the then Deputy Commandant Military, a general with a Duchenne smile that spoke of countless sea miles, offered a calmer reassurance. Fair winds and following seas, he bid us, which sounded a lot better than the ringing thought of brace for impact. The drill sergeants here were the directing staff, the ever-present Army General who marched us through lectures with the precision of a parade drill. Every day felt like an obstacle course, where some of us stumbled more than others. But then there was the Air Force General, an officer with an unwavering calm and the nurturing spirit of a squadron mom, a captivating presence, infectious enthusiasm, and energy that leaps off the page. She walked with us with so much passion, vigor, vim, verve, and of course, the attendant animation. She kept us fueled with food, but mostly, she kept us sane. She ensured we didn't completely implode under pressure. Your Excellency, we cannot forget the quiet diplomat of the team, a man of modest desires, infinite wisdom, and quotes from hundreds of books that we may never read. The Deputy Commandant Civil navigated our often heated discussions with the finesse of a seasoned ambassador and teacher. He could diffuse an academic disagreement faster than he could say international incident. Your Excellency, sir, Thursday mornings had us deciphering the difference between moral loneliness and holy longing. Led by the maverick Father Karanja and his team, we'd embark on a spiritual Salmagandhi unlike any other. One week, it was about desire. The next, the existential delights of a good pencil. You never quite knew if you are going to achieve spiritual enlightenment or just lose your mind trying to understand what lasting 1 minute longer or having a third eye meant. But today, as we look beyond the horizon, we know more. Your Excellency, sir, our march out today is being conducted by an armor of a man built for this tank. Under the Commandant's leadership, our academic journey ranged from study tours of 8 countries to a boot camp for our brains. His parting words, while heartfelt, were delivered with the intensity of a pre-battle pep talk.